Dave Holloway was having a spectacularly average day when the universe decided to make it less so. He'd been hauling fertilizer components to the agricultural colony on Proxima B, a job so mundane that the autopilot got bored and occasionally threw in a barrel roll just to check if Dave was still alive. He wasn't even the cool kind of space pilot, no leather jacket, no roguish stubble. Just a slightly overweight guy in his 40s with a receding hairline and a collection of coffee-stained cargo uniforms. Approaching drop zone in 15 minutes, announced the ship's AI in a voice Dave had programmed to sound like his childhood librarian. He found it soothing. "Would you like me to begin docking procedures?" Dave grunted affirmatively, while scrolling through a digital magazine about miniature ship models in bottles, his actual hobby being as exciting as his career choice. He'd just reached an article about recreating the Voyager 3 disaster in a whiskey flask when the proximity alarms blared. "Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity," reported Mrs. Fletcher, the AI. "Trajectory suggests intercept course." "Pirates?" Dave sighed, putting down his reader. "In this economy, what could they possibly want with fertilizer components?" The answer came in the form of a tractor beam that seized his ship with enough force to send his half-empty coffee mug flying across the cabin. "Scans indicate vessel of unknown configuration," the AI continued. "A no match in Alliance database." "Fantastic," Dave muttered, watching as a massive ship that resembled a Gothic cathedral crossed with a jellyfish loomed overhead. "The first contact, and I'm wearing the uniform with the mustard stain." The ship's communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The screen flickered, revealing what appeared to be a reptilian creature with too many eyes and not enough neck. It was draped in what looked like a discount Halloween costume shop's idea of evil space emperor. "Attention, insignificant vessel." The creature bellowed, sending Dave's audio levels into the red. "You have been captured by the glorious Krexian Empire. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance is futile and will result in immediate pain and suffering beyond your pathetic imagination." Dave adjusted the volume and squinted at the screen. "Hi there. Could you maybe dial back the caps lock a bit? My speakers are kind of cheap." The alien paused, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Aye, what?" The shouting. "It's a bit much," Dave explained, gesturing vaguely at the console. "Also, I'm not resisting. I'm hauling fertilizer. If you want it, just ask." Another alien figure shoved into view, this one wearing even more elaborate armor with what appeared to be entirely decorative spikes. "Silence, Earth scum. You do not dictate turns to the mighty Krexian." "Yeah, got that part," Dave interrupted, checking his watch. "Look, I'm actually on a schedule here. Are we doing this boarding thing or what?" The aliens conferred among themselves, clearly thrown off script. Finally, the first one returned to the screen. "Your insolence will be punished, human. Please prepare for boarding." The transmission cut off, and Dave sighed, looking down at his stained uniform. "Mrs. Fletcher, do I have time to change into something without dried ketchup on it?" "Negative, Dave. Boarding tube connecting in 20 seconds. Story of my life," he muttered, standing up and stretching his back until it gave a satisfying pop. He briefly considered hiding or finding a weapon, but honestly he was more annoyed than afraid. In 15 years of hauling cargo through the solar system and beyond, he'd dealt with mechanical failures, solar flares, and that one time when a shipment of experimental rodents got loose in the air vents. Alien abduction felt like just another inconvenience to add to his expense report. The airlock hissed open with surprisingly anticlimactic effect, and 3 Krexians stomped aboard. Up close, they looked like someone had tried to design a dinosaur based on a verbal description from a drunk person. Bipedal, yes, but with skin that seemed unable to decide if it wanted to be scales or feathers. Their armor was intimidating but impractical, with sharp protrusions that kept catching on the narrow corridor of Dave's ship. Kneel before the might of one began before banging his ornate helmet on the low ceiling. "How? Who builds these tunnels so small?" "Standard human cargo vessel specifications," Dave offered helpfully. "You might want to duck." The lead Krexian, apparently attempting to salvage the situation, pointed what looked like a ceremonial staff at Dave's chest. The staff emitted a pitiful whine, and then a series of colored lights blinked along its shaft. "You are now paralyzed with fear," the alien announced. Dave looked down at himself, then back at the alien. "Am I supposed to fall down or something?" "The fear toxin should be rendering you immobile and terrified," the alien insisted, shaking the staff as if it might be clogged. Dave shrugged. "I spent 20 years working retail before becoming a cargo pilot. My fear response is pretty much burnt out." The aliens exchanged what Dave interpreted as panicked glances, though with their multiple eye arrangement it was hard to tell. They huddled together, whispering furiously, occasionally shooting looks at Dave, who had taken the opportunity to lean against the wall and check if his insurance covered alien abduction. It didn't. But acts of piracy had a 500 credit deductible. Finally, they seemed to reach a decision. The tallest one approached Dave again, trying to loom menacingly despite having to hunch under the ceiling. "Human Dave Holloway," it declared, having apparently gleaned his name from the ship's registry. "You are hereby taken prisoner by the Krexian Empire for interrogation regarding Earth's defenses and weaknesses." "I haul poop components," Dave clarified. "I don't know anything about Earth's defenses except that the security line at the spaceport takes forever on Tuesdays." Silence. The alien shouted, then winced as its voice echoed painfully in the confined space. In a more moderated tone, it continued, "You will come with us. Resistance is inadvisable." Dave considered his options. His ship was caught in a tractor beam. He was unarmed. His cargo was perishable and already going to be late, and most importantly, he was curious. Actual aliens. Not the semi-sentient fungal colonies of Europa or the methane-breathing engineers of Titan, but proper extraterrestrial life from beyond the solar system. "Fine," he agreed, stepping away from the wall. "But I'm supposed to call in every 4 hours, or my company sends out a rescue team." This was a complete lie. Consolidated Shipping cared so little about its employees that they'd once forgotten Dave was on Ganymede for 2 extra weeks. The Krexians seemed to buy it, though, exchanging nervous glances again. "You will be permitted no communications," the leader declared, though less confidently than before. "Whatever," Dave said, following them toward the airlock. "Just so you know, I get spacesick in strange ships, so if I throw up on your fancy armor, that's on you." As they led him through the boarding tube into their vessel, Dave couldn't help but notice how the fearsome Krexians kept a careful distance from him, as if he might be contagious. Their ship was as impractical on the inside as it looked from the outside, all dramatic shadows and uncomfortable-looking metal surfaces with random spikes and atmospheric but completely unnecessary steam vents. Dave sneezed, the sound echoing dramatically through the cavernous chamber they'd entered. All 3 Krexians jumped back at least a meter. "Sorry," Dave said. "Not feeling sorry at all. Allergic to melodrama." The lead alien recovered its composure and gestured to its subordinates. "Take the human to the interrogation chamber. The Empire will extract all Earth secrets from this specimen." As they marched him down a corridor lined with what appeared to be holographic fire, seriously, who paid their interior decorator, Dave found himself wondering if he'd be back in time for his sister's birthday next month. He'd already bought her a souvenir snow globe from Proxima B with little alien farmers that weren't actually accurate at all. Somehow he doubted the Krexians would accept family obligation as an excuse to cut short whatever they had planned. Still, as far as bad days went, this one was at least novel. And that counted for something in Dave Holloway's extremely average life. The interrogation chamber of the Krexian vessel was exactly what Dave expected, dimly lit, unnecessarily foggy, with an abundance of sharp metal implements arranged on the walls like a psychopath's IKEA display. The centerpiece was a restraint chair that appeared to have been designed by someone who'd only ever seen medieval torture devices in low-budget films. "Behold the seat of agonies," announced a new Krexian who swept into the room with dramatic flair. Unlike the boarding party, this one wore a cape that constantly caught on the various pointy bits of the decor. "I am Commander Vrex, Chief Interrogator of the glorious Krexian Empire's 7th Pain Fleet." "Hi," Dave replied, watching as the cape-wearing alien untangled himself from a particularly aggressive wall hook. Dave Holloway, hauler of fertilizer components. Vrex was flanked by two other Krexians. One was noticeably shorter, with what appeared to be thick-lensed spectacles perched awkwardly between its multiple eyes. The other was the largest Krexian Dave had yet seen, with arms like tree trunks and considerably less ornamentation on its uniform. "This is Lieutenant Quib, torture technician," Vrex introduced the smaller alien, who gave a nervous nod, "and guard Gronk." The large one grunted. "Charmed," Dave said flatly. "Is there a bathroom I could use before we start?" "Long flight. Lots of coffee." The interrogation team exchanged confused looks. "You do not tremble at the sight of our legendary torture chamber," Vrex demanded, sweeping his arm to encompass the room. The gesture dislodged several dust particles that caught in the dramatic lighting, causing Dave to sneeze again. "Bless you," offered Guard Gronk in a surprisingly gentle bass voice. "Thanks," Dave replied. "Gronk," Vrex hissed. "We do not extend courtesies to prisoners." "Sorry, Commander," the large guard mumbled, shifting uncomfortably. Vrex turned back to Dave with renewed intensity. "You will soon learn to fear us, human. The Krexian Empire has extracted screams from the stoic rock beings of Detrax 9. We have broken the will of the gaseous philosophers of the Nebula Collective. Your species will prove no different." Dave nodded politely. "Impressive resume, but about that bathroom?" "Secure him in the seat of agonies," Vrex commanded, clearly frustrated by Dave's lack of appropriate terror. Gronk gently but firmly guided Dave to the chair, which was surprisingly comfortable aside from the metal restraints that closed around his wrists and ankles. Dave had slept in worse motel beds on long-haul routes. Lieutenant Quib approached with a tablet-like device, tapping at it nervously. "Commander, I've reviewed the biological data we have on humans. It's limited." "Apply the nerve stimulator at level 3, Vrex ordered, ignoring the concern. Quib hesitated. "But sir, we haven't calibrated it for human physiology." "Level 3. Vrex insisted, his scales flushing a deeper shade of green, and with obvious reluctance, Quib attached a small device to Dave's temple and adjusted some settings. A mild, tingling sensation spread across Dave's face, reminiscent of that time he'd tried a cheap electric razor. "Is something supposed to be happening?" Dave asked after 30 seconds of increasingly awkward silence. It's set to level 3, Quib explained, bewildered. "Most species are incapacitated by level 2. Maybe try his other temple?" Gronk suggested helpfully. "Human." Vrex thrust his face close to Dave's. "Are you employing some kind of resistance technique? Some secret military training?" Dave shook his head, causing the tingling device to fall off. "Nope. Just regular old me. Though I did have shingles last year, that was way worse than this tickle thing." "Shingles?" Quib perked up, seeming genuinely curious. "A defensive body armor?" "A viral infection. Affects the nerve pathways, really painful rash," Dave explained. "My entire left side felt like it was being stabbed with hot needles for about 3 weeks." All 3 Krexians stared at him in horror. "And this is common for humans?" Quib asked, making notes on his device. "Common enough." "My aunt had it twice," Dave answered with a shrug, or as much of a shrug as the restraints allowed. "Look, not to be difficult, but if I'm not getting that bathroom break, could we maybe speed this along? What exactly do you want to know?" Vrex recovered his composure and circled the chair menacingly. "Earth's defense systems. Military capabilities, weaknesses we can exploit for our invasion." "Again, I fly fertilizer," Dave sighed. "But our military capabilities include people who voluntarily run marathons for fun and kids who eat super spicy food on social media challenges. One guy I knew drank nothing but energy drinks for a month just to win a bet. Does that help?" Quib looked disturbed as he scribbled notes. Gronk was staring at Dave with what appeared to be growing admiration. "Enough." Vrex slammed his fist on a nearby console, which immediately sparked and went dark. "Hey, Quib. Bring the nerve probes." As Quib scurried off, Vrex leaned in close to Dave's face. No species has ever endured the full attention of a Krexian interrogation team. Soon, human, you will be begging to tell us everything. Dave met the alien's gaze steadily. You know what? I once spent 14 hours in an unventilated customs office on Mercury because someone filed my paperwork under livestock. After that, I'm pretty much immune to bureaucratic threats. For the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered across Vrex's features. Then he straightened, adjusting his cape with as much dignity as he could muster. Prepare phase 2, he announced ominously, stalking toward the door. And someone bring what is it called? Bathroom for the human. As the door hissed shut behind the commander, Gronk leaned down to whisper, Don't worry, Vrex gets like this with all new species. He'll calm down after you scream a bit. That's reassuring, Dave replied. Gronk patted his shoulder awkwardly. You seem nice. For prey. By the time Commander Vrex returned, Dave had been provided with what appeared to be a ceremonial urn for his bathroom needs. He decided not to ask questions, and was halfway through explaining Earth's weather patterns to an increasingly horrified Lieutenant Quib. And then sometimes the air gets so cold that water just falls from the sky as solid chunks, Dave was saying. Ice bombardment, Quib whispered, trembling slightly as he took notes. And your young play in this? Snow angels, snowball fights, yeah. Kids love it. Your offspring willingly engage in frozen projectile combat. Quib looked like he might faint. For enjoyment? Vrex stormed in, carrying what looked like a cross between a blender and a medieval flail. But enough fraternization. The preliminary softening has clearly failed. We must proceed to advanced techniques. Dave raised an eyebrow at the contraption. Is that a margarita maker? Because I could actually go for one right about now. This, Vrex announced with theatrical gravitas, is the mind extractor. It stimulates the pain centers of the brain while simultaneously amplifying truthful impulses. Neat, Dave commented. Does it come with a warranty? Vrex's eye ridges furrowed in confusion. What? Was nothing. Dave sighed. Just cargo hauler humor. Lieutenant Quib approached with a handheld scanner. Sir, I should conduct another baseline reading of the human's neural pathways before we apply the device. Vrex snapped. Quib reluctantly placed the business end of the mind extractor against Dave's temple. It hummed ominously, vibrating against his skull. You feel your resistance crumbling, human. Vrex crowed, his scales flaring in anticipation. Soon you will. Is it supposed to be making that rattling sound? Dave interrupted. Sounds like it needs a tune-up. The vibration had actually become quite pleasant, like one of those massage chairs at the spaceport. Dave found himself relaxing into it, the tension from hours of piloting finally easing from his neck. Increased to level 7. Vrex demanded, his voice climbing an octave. Quib winced. Sir, that's never been tested on. Level 7. There. The device's hum deepened, and Dave felt a mild warming sensation spread across his scalp. Oh, that's nice, he murmured. Like a hot stone massage. Vrex's jaw dropped. Literally dropped. Apparently Krexian jaws were hinged differently than human ones. The subject appears to be enjoying the nerve stimulation, Quib noted clinically, though Dave detected a hint of fascination in his voice. Impossible. Vrex snatched the device away, examining it for defects. This device has reduced a Hardraxian berserker to tears. Maybe I'm broken? Dave offered helpfully. I did have that concussion last year when a cargo container fell on me. Doctor said I'm neurologically unique now. Gronk, who had been quietly standing guard by the door, stepped forward. The commander. Perhaps we should try the pressure points of despair. Rex's expression brightened. Yes. Gronk, prepare the apparatus. While Gronk rumbled off to retrieve whatever fresh torture awaited, Vrex circled Dave's chair with renewed confidence. Human, your species has not yet been categorized in the imperial dominance hierarchy. Your resistance is unusual. He leaned closer, studying Dave with genuine curiosity. What strengthens you against our methods? Dave shrugged. Mostly apathy and student loan debt. Student loan debt, Quib repeated, typing furiously on his tablet. Yeah, you know. You borrow money for education, then spend the rest of your life paying it back at predatory interest rates. Dave yawned. After facing that every month torture loses its edge, Rex and Quib exchanged alarmed glances. Your own civilization tortures you financially, for seeking knowledge, Rex asked slowly. Pretty much. That and healthcare. My appendectomy cost more than my first spacecraft. Appendectomy? Quib's voice was barely a whisper. They cut you open and remove a body part that might get infected, Dave explained casually. I was awake for part of it when the anesthesia started wearing off. That was interesting. Quib dropped his tablet with a clatter. Rex took an involuntary step backward. You were conscious during internal organ extraction? The commander's voice had lost its bombastic quality. Just for a minute or two, Dave clarified. The surgeon hummed Rocket Man while sewing me back up. He had it stuck in my head for weeks. Gronk returned, wheeling in a contraption festooned with clamps, suction cups, and what appeared to be dental tools. He paused, noting the stunned expressions of his colleagues. Did I miss something? The human, Vrex, seemed to be struggling for words. The human allows other humans to remove its organs while it's conscious. Gronk's eyes widened. All 6 of them. For punishment. For healthcare, Dave corrected. Though with the bills afterward, it does feel like punishment. Gronk set down the tools he was holding with sudden gentleness, as if they seemed woefully inadequate now. Commander, Quib said quietly, retrieving his tablet, I've been analyzing the human's vital signs during our session. His stress hormones haven't elevated beyond baseline. Either their species is immune to fear, or what, Lieutenant? Rex demanded. Quib swallowed audibly. Or our methods are insufficient compared to what they routinely endure. A heavy silence fell over the interrogation chamber. Dave fought back another yawn. Perhaps, Rex finally said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, we should proceed with psychological techniques instead. Good call, Dave agreed. But fair warning, I've worked retail during holiday shopping season. My psychological trauma threshold is pretty high. As Rex swept out of the room, cape catching on yet another door hinge, Dave could have sworn he heard the commander muttering something that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. Dave was beginning to develop a crick in his neck from sitting in the seat of agonies for what felt like hours, and the restraints, while visually intimidating, were ergonomically questionable at best. He'd tried shifting positions several times, but comfort remained elusive, the first genuine discomfort he'd experienced since his capture. When the door hissed open again, Dave was surprised to see only Lieutenant Quib enter, carrying what appeared to be a metal helmet connected to a portable console. Commander Vrex is consulting the Imperial Torture Manual, Quib explained, not meeting Dave's eyes. I've been instructed to proceed with the memory extractor. Let me guess, Dave said. It's going to extract my memories. That is correct. Quib seemed surprised by Dave's deduction. Though most species find the process extremely distressing as their most traumatic memories are forced to the surface of consciousness. Dave nodded thoughtfully. You know, I'm starting to think you guys aren't very good at this. Quib nearly dropped the helmet. What? The torture thing. I'm not trying to be rude, but so far this has been less painful than my annual physical. Dave rolled his shoulders as best he could in the restraints, though this chair is getting there. We are the most feared interrogators in 3 galactic quadrants, Quib protested, though his voice lacked conviction. And I respect that, Dave assured him. It's just that humans are weird. We voluntarily eat chemicals that burn our tongues. We pierce our flesh with metal for decoration. Entinate peason. Some people run until their toenails fall off, just for fun. As Dave spoke, a realization dawned on him. He wasn't just enduring the torture, he was actually gaining the upper hand. The Krexians weren't frightening him, but he was unintentionally terrifying them with casual descriptions of human life. A strategy began to form in his mind. You know what's really painful? Dave leaned forward conspiratorially. Childbirth. My sister let me watch when my nephew was born. There was so much blood. Parts stretching that should not stretch, screaming for hours. She broke 2 of her husband's fingers just from squeezing his hand. Quib's scales had paled to a sickly yellow. Your females choose this? Oh yeah, some even do it without drugs. All natural, they call it. Dave nodded seriously. And then they often choose to do it again, and multiple times. The helmet in Quib's hands trembled slightly. Why would? How could? And don't get me started on human dental work, Dave continued, warming to his theme. Root canals. They drill into the living nerve inside your tooth. Sometimes the anesthetic doesn't reach all the way in. Stop, Quib whispered. And colonoscopies. That's where they... Please. Quib's voice cracked. No more. Dave fell silent, watching as the lieutenant set down the memory extractor with shaking hands. For the first time since his capture, Dave felt a twinge of guilt. He hadn't meant to traumatize the poor guy. Hey, we're not all masochists, Dave offered gently, though we do have those too. Ever heard of ultra-marathon runners? They. The door slid open, saving Quib from further psychological damage. Gronk entered, carrying a tray with what appeared to be food and water. Commander Vrex says the prisoner needs sustenance to endure the next phase, the large guard announced, then paused, taking in Quib's distressed state. Is everything okay, Lieutenant? Humans, Quib managed, are not what we thought. Gronk set the tray down next to Dave. I brought nutrition cubes and hydration fluid. Thanks, Dave said sincerely. Then, deciding to test his new strategy, he added, though I should warn you, human digestion is pretty violent. We dissolve food in acid strong enough to eat through metal, then push it through several meters of internal tubing, where bacteria break it down further. Gronk's eyes widened with what might have been admiration. Impressive biological warfare system. I guess it is. When you put it that way, Dave agreed, suddenly seeing human physiology in a new light. While they spoke, Dave had been subtly testing his restraints. They were designed to be escape-proof, but apparently for species with different joint flexibility than humans. With a casual rolling motion of his wrist that he'd perfected opening stuck cargo bay doors, Dave slipped his right hand free. Both aliens froze. Oh, sorry, Dave said, wiggling his fingers. These were getting tight. To demonstrate his peaceful intentions, he reached for a nutrition cube and popped it in his mouth. It tasted like cardboard soaked in artificial banana flavoring, remarkably similar to the protein bars in his ship's emergency kit. That's impossible, Quib breathed. Those restraints are calibrated for Type 7 musculature. Dave shrugged, working his other hand free with similar ease. Human shoulders are weird. We're basically held together with rubber bands and hope. He rotated his arm in its socket, producing a series of alarming pops that made both Krexians flinch. Should I alert the commander? Gronk asked uncertainly. Nah, don't bother him, Dave said, now working on his ankle restraints. I'm not going anywhere. Where would I go? We're in space, right? Besides, I haven't finished these delicious whatever these are. He held up another nutrition cube that had the consistency of a sponge that had been left in the sun too long. Quib and Gronk exchanged panicked glances, clearly caught between protocol and the unprecedented situation of a self-releasing prisoner who seemed more interested in snacks than escape. I'll just adjust the memory extractor settings, Quib decided, backing toward his equipment. Dave nodded encouragingly while freeing his last ankle. He stood and stretched, his spine producing more alarming cracks and pops. Both aliens winced at the sound. Sorry, that happens when I sit too long, Dave explained. Human spines are basically stacked bones with jelly donuts between them. They compress over time. Jelly donuts? Gronk repeated weakly. A figure of speech, Dave assured him, though the guard didn't look reassured. So, what's next on the torture agenda? Because I've got some stories about Earth sports injuries that might give you some ideas. As if on cue, The intercom crackled to life with Commander Vrex's voice. Lieutenant Quib. Status report. Quib looked at Dave, standing free beside the empty torture chair, then at the communication panel. His scales shifted through several colors before settling on a defeated gray. "Sir," he replied, "I think we might need to reconsider our approach." Commander Vrex burst through the door like a hurricane in a cape, then skidded to a stop, gaping at the scene before him. Dave was leaning casually against the torture equipment, munching on nutrition cubes, while Quib huddled in a corner, clutching his tablet like a shield. Gronk stood at attention, though his posture suggested he was having second thoughts about his career choices. "What is the meaning of this?" Vrex bellowed, his voice cracking on the last word. "Why is the prisoner not restrained?" "Indoor voice, please," Dave said mildly, "and technically I'm still a prisoner. Just a comfortable one." He gestured with a nutrition cube. "These aren't half bad once you get past the texture. Reminds me of the protein rations on that mining station near Neptune." Vrex's scales flushed a dangerous crimson. "Secure the human at once." Neither Quib nor Gronk moved. "Sir," Quib began hesitantly, "the restraints proved inadequate for human physiology." "And he hasn't tried to escape," Gronk added helpfully. "He's just been telling us about human recreational activities." Vrex turned his glare on Dave, who offered a friendly wave. "Your lieutenant and I were just discussing human medical procedures," Dave explained. "I was about to get into elective surgeries. You know, the ones people choose to have just to look different. They let doctors break their leg bones and insert metal rods to become taller, or inject botulinum toxin, one of the deadliest poisons in existence, into their faces to reduce wrinkles." Vrex blinked rapidly, his crimson flush fading to a confused orange. "You poison your faces, intentionally. For beauty," Dave confirmed solemnly. "And don't get me started on competitive eating contests." "Eating contests?" Vrex echoed weakly. "Yeah, you know, where people compete to consume the most food in the shortest time. The hot dog record is like 70-something in 10 minutes. Makes your stomach stretch so much it presses against other organs." A strange gurgling sound emanated from Vrex's direction. It took Dave a moment to realize the commander was experiencing the Krexian equivalent of nausea. "Sir, I've been compiling data on human resilience," Quib interjected, tapping his tablet nervously. "It appears their species has evolved under conditions we would classify as extreme duress by Krexian standards. Their recreational activities alone would qualify as level 6 torture protocols in our manual." Vrex steadied himself against the wall. "Impossible. No sentient species would evolve to enjoy pain." "Not enjoy, exactly," Dave corrected. "We just have a weird relationship with it. No pain, no gain. That's a human saying about exercise. Building muscle actually requires tearing it first." Vrex slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his cape pooling around him like a deflated balloon. "You tear your muscles purposely, and then we put ice on them afterward," Dave continued. "Extreme cold therapy. Some people take ice baths where they sit in water so cold it makes your skin turn blue." Gronk, who had been listening with increasing fascination, finally spoke up. "Human, is it true your species willingly jumps from high places with only fabric to slow your fall?" "Skydiving? Oh yeah. Great rush. The free fall part is the best. Your stomach feels like it's trying to exit through your throat." Dave grinned at the memory of his one and only jump, a birthday gift from his sister that he'd never quite forgiven her for. "Some people do it without the parachute opening right away. They call it flying squirrel or something." "Wingsuit-based jumping," Quib corrected, showing Dave an image on his tablet. "I've been researching human extreme sports while you were talking. Your information networks contain extensive documentation of these activities." Dave peered at the screen. "Huh. That actually looks worse than what I did. Good for them." Vrex had gone completely still, his eyes fixed on some middle distance, as if his brain had simply stopped processing input. Dave almost felt bad for him. "Look," Dave said, crouching down to the commander's level, "I think we got off on the wrong foot here. You thought humans would be like other species you've encountered. but we're just built different. It's not your fault your torture methods don't work on us. Vrex's gaze slowly focused on Dave. Our empire has conquered 17 star systems, he whispered. No species has ever. I've never failed to extract information. If it helps, I'd probably have told you anything you wanted to know without the torture, Dave offered. Most humans would. We're actually pretty chatty. This admission seemed to break something fundamental in Vrex. A high-pitched keening sound emerged from somewhere deep in his throat. Quib rushed to his commander's side. Sir, your stress markings are showing. Indeed, bright purple spots had begun to appear along Vrex's neck ridges. The commander didn't seem to notice or care. All those years at the Imperial Torture Academy, he murmured, top of my clutch in advanced pain application. For what? To be defeated by a cargo hauler who finds our methods relaxing. I wouldn't say relaxing, Dave clarified. The chair was pretty uncomfortable. Maybe add some lumbar support? Gronk had moved to stand beside Dave, no longer even pretending to guard him. Could you tell me more about this roller coaster activity I found in the data? Humans strapped themselves into small carts and… Not now, Gronk, Quib hissed, still attending to his commander, who had begun rocking slightly back and forth. Dave surveyed the room, one alien having an existential crisis, another fussing over him, and the third now scrolling through images of human amusement parks with undisguised fascination. He'd somehow managed to completely upend the power dynamic without throwing a single punch. So, Dave said, clapping his hands together, what happens now? Because I still have a fertilizer shipment to deliver, and my company docks pay for late deliveries. Before anyone could answer, the ship's intercom system crackled to life. Attention all personnel. The high command vessel approaching for inspection. To prepare for arrival of Supreme Interrogator Zooks in 15 standard units. Barrow! The announcement seemed to snap Vrex out of his stupor. He lurched to his feet, scales now cycling rapidly through colors like a malfunctioning traffic light. High command? Here? Now? His voice had risen at least 2 octaves. They're coming to evaluate our progress with the human subject. Dave, Quib, and Gronk all looked at each other, then back at the increasingly panicked commander. Well, Dave said pragmatically, this should be interesting. Section 6, the resolution. The 15 standard units, which Dave had determined were roughly equivalent to Earth minutes, passed in a flurry of frantic activity. Vrex attempted to restore order to the interrogation chamber while simultaneously having what appeared to be a nervous breakdown. Quib kept muttering statistics about human endurance while reorganizing his torture implements into neater rows. Gronk, meanwhile, had appointed himself Dave's unofficial tour guide, explaining Krexian customs in hushed tones. When Supreme Interrogator Zooks enters, you must avert all eyes, Gronk advised. Also, do not mention food. The Supreme Interrogator is sensitive about his feeding tentacles. Noted, Dave replied, helping Gronk straighten a particularly menacing-looking device that resembled a potato peeler crossed with a waffle iron. Any other tips? Perhaps do not mention the, what did you call it, the colonoscopy procedure. I'm still having trouble processing that one. Dave patted the large alien's arm sympathetically. Fair enough. The ship shuddered slightly as the high command vessel docked. Rex, who had finally managed to stop his scales from color cycling, drew himself up with as much dignity as he could muster. Lieutenant Quib, return the prisoner to the restraints, he ordered. Quib glanced uncertainly at Dave, who raised an eyebrow. Sir, the human has demonstrated that our restraints are ineffective, Quib reminded him. Perhaps we could. I'll sit in the chair, Dave interrupted, taking pity on them. No restraints needed. We can pretend they're working. Relief washed over Vrex's features. Yes. Good. Cooperative. Dave settled back into the seat of agonies, arranging his expression into what he hoped looked like restrained discomfort. How's this? Tortured enough? Perhaps more grimacing. Quib suggested helpfully. Most species show dental distress when in pain. Dave bared his teeth in an exaggerated grimace. Perfect, Gronk approved. very intimidated looking. Before further coaching could occur, the chamber door slid open with a dramatic hiss. The Krexians immediately stiffened to attention, their scales flattening in what Dave recognized as their species' version of fear. Supreme Interrogator Zux glided into the room like a nightmare draped in ceremonial armor, taller than Gronk by at least a head, with scales so dark they appeared almost black. Zux radiated the kind of authority that didn't need volume to command attention. 4 elite guards followed, taking positions around the chamber's perimeter. The commander Vrex, Zux's voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. Report on your progress with the human specimen. Vrex stepped forward, his cape only slightly trembling. Supreme Interrogator. We have. That is to say, the human has proven. The human has proven resistant to conventional methods. Quib interjected when it became clear Vrex was malfunctioning. We have been exploring alternative approaches. Zux's gaze shifted to Dave, who maintained his grimace while trying to look appropriately terrorized. A cargo pilot, Zux observed. Not military and not diplomatic. Yet High Command receives reports that human space is impenetrable. The Supreme Interrogator circled Dave slowly. 603. Is it so? What secrets do you hide, I wonder? Hey. Dave remained silent, unsure whether speaking would help or hurt his new allies. He's been extremely resistant to pain stimuli, Vrex managed, finding his voice. We've applied the nerve stimulator at unprecedented levels. Unprecedented levels, Quib echoed, nodding vigorously. Zux's eyes narrowed. And the results? A tense silence fell over the chamber. Dave realized the Krexians were seconds away from complete disaster. Making a split-second decision, he let out a theatrical moan. Please, no more, he gasped, slumping in the chair. I can't take another session. Your methods are too advanced. Everyone turned to stare at him. The Krexians looked shocked, while Zux appeared thoughtful. The human speaks. The Supreme Interrogator noted. What have you learned from it, Commander? Another precarious silence. Dave caught Vrex's eye and gave a tiny nod. We have discovered, Vrex began cautiously, that humans possess extraordinary biological resilience. Their species routinely endures conditions that would incapacitate Krexians. Such as? Zux prompted. Quib stepped forward, tablet in hand. They deliberately consume caustic chemicals for pleasure. They expose themselves to temperature extremes recreationally. Their medical practices involve conscious surgery. Their young engage in frozen projectile warfare. With each statement, Zux's posture grew more rigid. You expect me to believe these claims? It's all true, Dave interjected, dropping the pretense of torture. We're basically the galaxy's weirdos. Our planet tried to kill us so many times that we just got used to it. Zux turned sharply toward him. You admit this freely? Why not? It's not a secret. Most humans would tell you anything if you just asked nicely. We're very social. Dave shrugged. The torture thing was never going to work, not because we're superior or anything, we're just desensitized in weird ways. The Supreme Interrogator studied Dave for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, to everyone's shock, Zux began to laugh, a sound like gravel being poured down a metal chute. High Command suspected as much, Zux admitted, the laughter subsiding. Our reconnaissance drones have observed human behavior for some time. We needed confirmation that they were as unusual as they appeared. Sir? Vrex looked completely lost. The Krexian Empire has conquered many worlds, Commander, Zux explained, but we are not fools. Some species are not worth the resources required to subjugate them. The Supreme Interrogator gestured toward Dave. A species that voluntarily jumps from high altitudes for amusement would not surrender merely because we threatened them with discomfort. Dave couldn't help but feel oddly proud, so the whole interrogation thing was, what? A test? In a manner of speaking, Zux confirmed, had you broken easily, your world might have been worth conquering. Instead, you have confirmed our analysis. Humans are too psychologically unpredictable and physically resilient to be efficiently controlled. So, what happens now? Dave asked, genuinely curious. Zooks made a gesture that might have been the Krexian equivalent of a shrug. You will be returned to your vessel with a formal declaration of the Krexian Empire's disinterest in Earth territory. Just like that? I'm free to go? With a warning, Zooks added. Keep your species contained to your current territories. The Empire has no desire for conflict with beings who consider pain a recreational activity. Dave stood, extending his hand out of habit. Sounds fair. Zooks stared at the offered hand suspiciously. It's a handshake, Dave explained. Human greeting ritual, non-violent. Unless it's my Uncle Frank, he added as an afterthought. He does the crushing thing. Lost a bet once because of him. The Supreme Interrogator cautiously extended a clawed appendage, allowing the briefest contact before withdrawing. Commander Vrex will escort you to your vessel, Zooks declared, turning to leave. Lieutenant Quib, prepare a full report on human biological oddities for the Imperial database. Guard Gronk, you will. Actually, Dave interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. I was thinking these three might make good cultural exchange officers. They've already got a head start understanding humans. Zooks paused, considering. An interesting proposal. Cultural intelligence could be valuable. Vrex, Quib, and Gronk stood frozen, gazes darting between Dave and their superior. Plus, Dave added, I promised Gronk I'd explain roller coasters, and Quib seemed interested in our medical practices, and for research purposes. Very well. Zooks decided after a moment, a cultural exchange initiative may proceed, and on a limited basis. 1. As the Supreme Interrogator swept out with the guard detail, Dave turned to the three Krexians who had begun this day as his torturers, and somehow ended up as something else entirely. So, he said with a grin, who wants to learn about this human tradition called happy hour? 6 months later, the Proxima B agricultural colony received its first official Krexian diplomatic delegation. The colony administrator was initially alarmed to find 3 aliens requesting entry until she saw the human cargo pilot escorting them, wearing what appeared to be a modified Krexian ceremonial cape over his standard shipping uniform. Dave Holloway, she read from her tablet. You're 3 months overdue with a fertilizer shipment. Long story, Dave replied with a shrug, but I brought something better than fertilizer. Meet the galaxy's first Krexian experts on human culture. Behind him, Vrex adjusted his translator, Quib clutched a tablet filled with research questions, and Gronk proudly displayed a t-shirt reading I survived a human roller coaster. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, Supreme Interrogator Zooks was updating the Imperial Threat Assessment database. Under humans, a new designation appeared, too much trouble to conquer. Approach with caution. Send diplomats, not warriors. And under Dave Holloway, a much shorter entry, unremarkable cargo pilot, terrifying diplomat. Offer nutrition cubes to appease.